Hi guys, my name is Liddy and I'm a UK-based medical student. I run this channel with my friend Hazal and we use it to document our lives and also share student tips along the way. We all know the feeling of having too many subjects or too many subtopics to study, and a lot of the time it is quite difficult to try and find a way to fit it into your week and to fit it into your revision schedule on a regular basis. Trust me, all students go through it. But don't worry, because in this video we'll make the process a whole lot easier. I'll be discussing 4 different tips that are pivotal if you want to be able to balance studying lots of different subjects. So let's jump straight into it and get started with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to plan. Having a plan is pivotal, especially when you have lots of different types of content to get through. This particular tip is split into 3 different sections. Section 1 is all about creating a schedule. You need to sit down and make a detailed revision schedule on what you need to revise and when, and ensure that this revision schedule that you are making has details about the different subjects and different subtopics. Having one central place to kind of look at this information makes the whole thing less overwhelming, and it will ensure that there are no clashes in your revision timetable. So back to the actual details of this revision schedule, ensure that you are very clear with yourself in what tasks and activities you have to do on a daily basis. There's no point in blocking out 2 hours on a Saturday to do maths without detailing exactly what maths means. Do you mean to say that you need to look at topic 15 and 16 of maths? You need to look at, integration and differentiation? Do you mean that you need to attend tuition or a study group? Be very clear with what you mean. Don't just write the name of the topic or the name of the subject. Be very clear in exactly what revision you are doing during that time that you have blocked out for that particular subject. You can create this schedule by working backwards from your exam dates and from perhaps the academic goal you have for yourself. If my academic goal is to start practice papers in May, I will ensure that all of my revision notes are finished by April, for example. So once you know what your academic goal is and exactly what you are aiming for and when your exam dates are, then you can work backwards and ensure that your revision schedule kind of reflects the intensity of papers you have or the importance of certain topics to you. The second section in this plan is to essentially create a weekly to-do list. Once you have this exam season revision schedule, like this brief overview of what to study and when, you can then go in and create a weekly schedule and to-do list that you can then look at on a daily basis. I think it's important to plan to do a few subjects each day rather than to dedicate one day of the week to one subject. I don't feel like that's the most effective way to approach your studies. You know for yourself how many subjects you have to do, how many subtopics you have to do, and I think it's important to split this across multiple days rather than to try and concentrate this on a particular day. You're better off splitting it so that you're getting that spaced repetition in throughout the week and throughout the month. One A-star tip that I think honestly boosted my grades at GCSEs and A-Levels and really allowed me to get all A-stars and A's and also be doing well at med school right now is what I would do is kind of seclude my revision to Monday to Saturday or Monday to Friday and ensure that I have at least one day that week, whether it's Sunday, where I go through all of the notes I made or go through all of the different topics I visited that week, and this will ensure that I kind of make a summary for myself of all the information I went over that week before moving on to a different week where I will now have to consume different information. You don't want to find yourself forgetting what you are learning. You want to ensure that you are continuously revisiting things. Well, obviously when you have different subjects and different topics to do, it is unrealistic to think that you will be able to go through every different topic you have touched on 10 times. So just to give myself the benefit of the doubt and to just double check that I am truly consuming the information I'm taking in, I would ensure that on Sundays I kind of seclude that time, not to do more revision, but to double check on the information I've consumed that week, to revisit all of the information I may have consumed. The third section of planning is timing. Dedicate time on subjects based on how much time you genuinely need to spend on that particular subject. So when I was in GCSEs or A-Levels, if I knew that I found a particular subject quite easy to get through, I may spend less time on it compared to a different subject where I may find more difficult to get through. For me personally, in medicine at university right now, I know that a majority of questions I might get in my exam will be related to clinical practice compared to anatomy. So what I might do is spend 60% of my time, revising all the clinical stuff and perhaps only 40% of my time revising anatomy. And that's because I know that clinical stuff is what will take up a majority of my exam papers. and this is what I allow to direct my revision schedule. So I think it's so important to have a similar mentality. How many papers do you have for that particular subject? How much revision do you have to do? Are you struggling with this subject? Do you have to put in more hours within that subject? So for example, let's take maths and biology into consideration. My knowledge for maths was here and my knowledge for biology was here. If I gave both of them equal attention every day that I came to study, then they would both increase like this. But the issue is I need my knowledge with maths to reach the same level as biology. So if that's the case, I need to do an uneven distribution and start investing more time in maths compared to biology. And I think that's one thing students struggle to understand, and that may be one of the things making it difficult for you to study multiple subjects on a regular basis. I'm not saying disregard subjects you find easy. I'm saying be okay with the fact that you do need to spend a little more time with subjects that you find harder or more difficult, and you shouldn't feel guilty about this. And I actually recommend it if you want to be able to do well in all of your subjects rather than do well in that one subject but flop everything else. Tip number 2 is to group. Sometimes when we have multiple subjects, what we find is that some of these subjects tend to be linked in some way, and so it may be easier to study this collection of subjects on the same day. This is known as task batching. Task batching is the act of pairing and grouping similar tasks together. By working on similar subjects around a similar period of time, it may be easier for you to switch your concentration between these different subjects, which will cause minimum distraction and minimum procrastination. So when you're doing 10, 11 topics at GCSEs, it probably makes sense for you to perhaps do biology, chemistry and physics all on one day, because all of them come under the category of science. You may need to use similar areas of your brain. You may need to do similar questions. So it might be easier for you to kind of task batch and put these activities into one time block. If you just spend 2 hours writing an English essay for your revision for English, it would then be perhaps easier for you to then switch into history, which may also require you to do some essay writing. But on the other hand, unpopular opinion, everyone works differently, and for you, moving between different subjects that require different areas of your brain and different skills might actually be refreshing, because it allows you to take a break from one subject to another and things end up feeling less repetitive and less monotonous. So contextualize this specific tip for yourself and try different combinations of the subjects that you are studying to see what works best. Another aspect of this tip on grouping things is in relation to how you study on a regular basis. So what do I mean when I say this? So for me, whether it's A-Levels or GCSEs or uni, I may ensure that on a daily basis when I get back home from school or uni, I'm doing 2 to 3 subjects or 2 to 3 subtopics. And what I try to do is ensure that these subtopics are related to lectures or lessons or subjects that I may have had that day at school. So if you know, for example, that you have a photosynthesis lesson on Monday, you might structure your revision in a way where you cover photosynthesis when you get home and do some practice questions on that. I think it's really useful when you acquire knowledge and then kind of like consolidate this knowledge via questions later on in the day during your revision. So touching on certain topics during the week allows me to free up my weekend to perhaps go over remaining topics that I haven't had time to look at yet, to go over remaining subjects that I haven't perhaps had time to really go into depth with. Tip number 3 is to adapt. It's important to be self-aware and kind of know what revision technique works for different subjects, and especially when you have multiple subjects / multiple subtopics, you cannot expect one revision method to kind of work for all of them. All subjects are unique in their own way and require their own different needs. Because of this, you will need a different study method for different subjects. Perhaps one of the things that is making it so difficult for you to have to study different subjects is because you are not adapting your revision in how you approach these different subjects. And I think this is one a lot of us need to consume, because I know when I was in A-Levels, I was such an aesthetic notes babe. Like, I loved making notes and highlighting stuff, especially for things like biology or English. But I came to realize this is not feasible for me to try and do with maths, for example, where the main way to revise maths is practice questions. If you try to fit everything into this one type of revision and you try to mold it to suit your personal preference, you will be missing out on effective revision. Adapt your revision method according to the different type of content you need to consume, and you will be surprised on how much more effective your revision becomes. It will not make sense for me to sit down and make pretty notes on how to answer maths questions. We all know with maths, you just gotta do it. Like you just have to practice and practice and practice and practice, compared to maybe science, where there are different processes and different systems you have to learn, and a mind map might be more appropriate for this. You need to be able to adapt and try different things, try all different things, and just see what works best together. This goes for uni as well. Like with anatomy, I find it easier to annotate diagrams and to annotate different structures of the body, whereas with pharmacology, where I need to learn all about drugs, I find that easier to learn via flashcards. And I think this adapting is not just refreshing for you and your revision when you have so many subjects to get through in the day, but it does mean that you spend less time studying overall, because you're being super efficient and supercharging your productivity via the methods of revision you are using for your different subjects. Another thing you can adapt is your environment and your association with different subjects. So with sciences, you might prefer to kind of study in a group, study at school, study at the university library, whereas with maths, you might prefer to do that at your desk, at home, because it requires your maximum concentration. Try to associate different subjects with different locations, different subjects with different learning styles, just so that it keeps the whole thing less tedious for you. And tip 4 is rest. Give yourself regular breaks and say no to cramming and all-nighters. That is not our portion. Like, we're not doing that this exam season. Give yourself time to actually be able to get through the different subjects and to actually be able to consolidate the information you are learning throughout the different subjects. If you try to cram everything and if you're not actually taking care of yourself, you are unable to work at your maximum productivity and at your maximum understanding. Taking breaks is just as important as doing the work. If you're working yourself too hard and feeling burnt out, it is practically impossible for things to stick in your head to the best of your ability and to the extent in which that information could really be consolidated. It doesn't matter if you're getting through 5 or 6 subjects. If you're not actually consuming the information, then it obviously doesn't mean much. With revision, especially when it is an intense period of time in which exam season is coming up, quality is always much more important than quantity. Efficiency over intensity. I will never stop screaming that. Having to study a lot of different subjects or subtopics can be very tiring. That's why it's so important to actually look after yourself. Take care of yourself and ensure that the revision you are doing is sustainable. I always say that, you know, as someone who was lucky enough to kind of get 9s and A stars and A's, GCSE, A-Levels, and also get into medical school, I believe that I could have still achieved this level of success while taking care of my mental health. It doesn't have to be an either or situation. You don't have to sacrifice your mental health to get good grades. You can still work super hard and get 7 hours of sleep. You can still work super hard and give yourself that 1 hour lunch break. Breaks are key in feeling refreshed and rejuvenated to ensure that you can even stay on top of your revision schedule and work through your to-do list. And if you're someone who struggles to take breaks and take care of yourself, you can look into getting an accountability buddy, ask your friends if they can help you stay on top of these things, try the Pomodoro technique, ask your parents to keep an eye out for you if you're spending too long at your desk upstairs. There are different methods that you can put in place to avoid these bad habits from seeping in. As mentioned previously, it is important to have a good revision schedule. So if you need help in organizing your different subjects into a revision schedule, then check out the video that we made on our channel by clicking on it. It should be on screen right now. And I'll be sure to see you guys for a new video next week. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.